Good evening, my two-fisted friends, and welcome to another episode of the Storytellers. I'm your host, Graham Nolan. I am a 39-year veteran of the comic book industry as a writer, artist, publisher, art director, blasing, blasing, blasing. But anyway, it's been a while since I've done one of these shows where I've showcased an artist who is no longer with us, a classic artist. So many of these guys toiled uh, in this business and were amazing talents. But they, for whatever reason, they didn't work on the hot book or something. Uh, People don't really know who they are, and I like to showcase these guys because um, they worked in an era where there were no royalties and just concentrated on doing great work. And tonight we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Bob Oksner. And Bob had been around almost from the beginning of comics. And in fact, when I started doing some research on him tonight, what I found out was that when he was doing the work that brought him to my attention, the stuff that I really loved, the guy was in his 50s and 60s, you know, and was just amazing, doing amazing work. So, in a business that kind of reveres youth, like most entertainment businesses, this guy was kicking ass, in his 50s and 60s. And well, now I can relate to that because I'm 60. And I hope I live as long as Bob did. He lived till 91 years old. Let me say hello to some of the folks here in the chat. Dr. Mask is here. Don Perkage is here. Good evening, Don. Marcus Kellegrew is here. Wiley J. Draws is here. JP Roca, what's good? Paul Johnson. Christina Lynn is here. Hello, Christina. Richie Dupe says, hail, Comicsgate, hail, and bananas to all. Well, okay. We've got some bananas. Dr. Mask is throwing a nice glass of bourbon up for Christina. And there it is. And Big Raj is on the board already with a wonderful Canadian $1.99 super sticker. Thank you, Big Raj. Much appreciated. Past Master Dan says he can see a 91-year-old Graham Nolan. Some days I feel like that. But today's not one of them. So let's talk about Bob. I've got some really great artwork to show you guys. I'll give you a little backstory about who he is or was, and what his career entailed, and then we'll go into the art and we'll go over that and talk about why it's so great. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's amazing. This guy's work really does it for me. In fact, if you look at my work, and I didn't realize this till I was going over his work today, but subconsciously, when I draw women, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not thinking John Romita, I'm not thinking John Buscema or these guys that were known for drawing, beautiful women. I'm thinking Bob Oksner. And when I look at my drawings of women characters, I can definitely see the Bob Oksner influence. So Bob was born in Paterson, New Jersey in 1916. So he had been around almost from the beginning of comics. His earliest work was around 1939 or 1940. But he started out to pursue a legal career at New York University. And while he was editing the campus humor magazine, he met a lot of cartoonists and started to rethink his career. He ended up enrolling at the Art Students League, very prestigious art school, and eventually received a master's in arts from Columbia University, another amazing school. So, Bob was obviously a bright guy. I never got to meet him, which is a shame. I really would have loved to have, because he lived, like I said, till 91. So let's see. So what was that? 2007? Yeah, 2007 he passed. Um, so his earliest work is around 1939, 1940, and he worked for a packaging house called Funny's Inc. And back in the day, there was a lot of these packaging houses. In fact, Eisner and Iger had one. Simon and Kirby. I was going to say Simon and Schuster. Simon and Kirby had one where they would package material for the publishers, and from soup to nuts. They would hire the guys and deliver all the product to the publishers. And so that's what Funny's Inc. did. And back in the day, uh, they used to send stuff to Timely Comics as well. And Timely was the precursor to Marvel Comics. Um, and they like to hire people away from Funny's Inc. And Timely did that. So Bob got his first job working at an actual comic book company at Timely Comics. And that was around 1942. So let's see, 42, so 32. So Bob was like in his early mid 20s at this point. So he started working on a character called the Destroyer and a character called Marvel Boy. Marvel Boy actually got brought back in the 1950s, and then Roy Thomas brought him back later on in the Fantastic Four during the George Perez era. But I digress. This stuff just floats around in my head. In 1945, he began drawing a syndicated strip called Miss Cairo Jones. I'd never heard of this strip, but I was able to find some samples of it, so I'll be showing you that in a little bit. And that lasted like 2 years, till 1947. The great thing about this business is that it's small enough that people in it are looking and they notice your stuff. So, okay, so Miss Cairo Jones didn't last very long, but it did get eyeballs on his work. And one of the people that did see it was Sheldon Mayer, who was an editor at DC Comics. Also a good humor cartoonist. And he was a fan of the Miss Cairo Jones strip, and he hired Oksner to work at DC. And at that point, the die was cast because Oksner would spend the rest of his career there at DC Comics. And Bob even then had a penchant for drawing the pretty ladies. So it made sense for him to start on the Black Canary, which was his first work over there. And he was very prolific in the 50s and 60s, illustrating books. A lot of them were licensed books. Books like Adventures of Jerry Lewis, Sergeant Bilko, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, The Adventures of Bob Hope. And then he would also do humor and romance comics in the vein of like Archie type of stuff, like Leave It to Binky, A Date with Judy, and Stanley and His Monster, and many, many more. One of my favorite comics that he did in the late 60s was one that you heard me talk about on other streams called Angel and the Ape. And he was the artist and the co-creator of that. And it's just it's a goofy premise, but it's just so beautifully drawn. And when the first issue he inked himself, and then I think the second issue Wally Wood inked him, and Woody inked a couple issues over him. And let me get rid of this here. Hold on a second. Boop, boop. Okay, there we go. I just realized that was up. Then Henry Scarpelli started inking him too. And surprisingly, I mean, Scarpelli's stuff looked good, but surprisingly, Woody's stuff did not look as good on him. I don't know why. Maybe it was, where Woody was at that point in his life in the late 60s. But I really didn't like his inks over Bob. Bob had such a really great fluid inking style, and I prefer him on himself. So when the humor and romance work dried up at DC, he did some superhero comics, usually featuring the heroines. Books like Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Lois Lane, and one of my favorites, Mary Marvel. Now, Mary Marvel didn't have her own series, so she had backup stories in the Shazam books, and particularly no, no. Well, Bob did do some of the actual Captain Marvel stories too, um, and I didn't think uh, he was particularly well suited for it, the way that, say, Kurt Schaffenberger was, or CC Beck at first, who first relaunched it and is one of the creators of Captain Marvel. Um, Bob's Captain Marvel stuff was okay. It didn't. It looked like he had to labor over it to try and capture that CC Beck style. But when it came to Mary Marvel, he was pure Bob Oksner, and wait till you see some of these pages. They're just amazingly beautiful, uh, uh, and fun. The thing too that I really like about him is he always brought the sexy to his comics, to the girls that he would draw. So many depictions of women in comics today, it looks like the artist is using porn magazines as the models for them. And um, Bob's ladies always look sexy, but were never sexual in their look. They always had that girl next door, and you'll see some of the body language that he uses, which is just wonderful. But Bob could also do badass superhero stuff too. He had a long run inking Kurt Swan on Superman. After Murphy Anderson left, Bob came in to do the inking, and from my personal taste, he was my favorite over Kurt Swan. My second favorite over Swan was later on in his career when Al Williamson was inking him for that short period. Uh, Boy, those two guys, Bob and Al actually have somewhat similar inking styles too, and I didn't notice that until the two of them inked Kurt. Um, but yeah, that was great stuff. But Bob also did Superman covers for the Superman book and for Action Comics as well, that he penciled and inked, and those are amazing. They're fun, or they're powerful, or they're both, which I really like. And I wish he'd have drawn a Superman book, just penciled and inked it. It would have been freaking amazing. Um, in something else I learned tonight too, with doing my research, that from 1969 until 1986, when the strip Dondi had ended, that Bob wrote the plots for his old pal Erwin Hazen. Erwin was a former instructor at the Cubit School that I studied under. He was quite a character, but they were very good friends, and Bob was plotting those, and Erwin was writing the dialogue. And Bob did that up until 1986 when the strip ended, but he had stopped drawing like a couple of years before that. He had it with drawing. I read on Mark Evaniers' site that he actually sold his artboard, his drawing table, and all his equipment and everything, and that he would get those requests for commissions or something like that, and he's like, I got nothing to draw on. So when he was done drawing, he was done drawing. He just didn't have any interest, which is a shame. I would have, but maybe his skills had, his eyes or whatever, and he wasn't happy with the way the stuff looked, and I could understand that, kind of like a fighter getting out when the time is right. That's the man himself right there. Let's see if I can blow this up a little bit. There we go. That's better. This looks to be in the 1940s to me. There's not a lot of pictures of Bob. There's some where he's older. One of his last pictures was at a Comic-Con in, I think, 2002 or something like that, when he was in his mid to late 80s. But here he is, a relatively young man. Now let's get to some of the goodies. One of the strips that I forgot to mention was this is also in the 1960s, called Susie, and it was about a kind of a buxom girl. Uh, I never actually read it. I never saw it when it was being printed. I just look at the beautiful pictures, but I got some of that. So here's Miss Cairo Jones, that one I was telling you about from the 1950s. And you can see there's a Milton Caniff sort of feel to this art style. Uh, it's fine, it's not really great yet, but he's a young guy doing this stuff. So you fast forward here to Susie, which is, what is it, 1967, this strip. And one of the things I love, one of the many things I love about Bob's work is his character expressions. Look at those characters, and look at the looks on these guys back here. So great. Here's a great one. This shows you Bob's humor drawing, drawing Jerry Lewis and drawing this character up here. But then here he is drawing, kind of a heroic, um, straight up Flash and Captain Cold character. And I just look at the beautiful line work here too. The wrinkles, the black placement. Great stuff. This is The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, again based on a TV show. But look at those cute girls. Look at the faces. And he's got the likenesses of Dwayne, was it Hickman that played Dobie Gillis? And Bob, he played Gilligan's Island. He played Gilligan, Bob Denver as Maynard Krebs. Now, I really love this cover for a lot of reasons. The simplicity of it, for one, the colors on it. I would buy this in a second. These bold primary colors on the logos, and then you have these nice softer colors. So you've got a warmer color here, the orange. There's even like an airbrush effect on her arm here, on his cheeks, which was much more difficult to do back then. But there's great perspective here, drawing your eye in. Um, the girl is cute. I mean, look at this. I mean, this could be, you work that face a little bit more realistic, and this could be, every bit as Dave Stevens ish. You know, that's just a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. Okay, let's see here. Here's another Leave It to Binky. Gonna have to track down some of these because I love these covers too. I'm hoping he does all the interiors, but these are just amazing. Look at this great haunted house back here. The owl, you know. And I love this period too because Bob does his homework. I mean, these girls are wearing clothes of the day, very stylish clothes too. He's not, faking it. Because let's say this is the 1960s. So Bob is in his 50s, maybe late 40s. Certainly, you know, not tuned in and turned on, tuned in, and turned out, or whatever that thing was. Uh, but his clothing, like even in this one here, look at this, the pattern here, very, very 70s or 60s. I'm not sure what era this was. This might have been late 60s. And here's Angel and the Ape. Now, I posted this on a show, on a professional show, when we were pointing out, artists that people don't really know about. And my bro Dan Fraga had never heard of Bob Oksner, and so his first experience was watching was when I showed this, and we were all just oogling over this ink line and the hair here and these wrinkles. And again, look at this clothing. This was very mod for the day, and that girl is just so cute. Here's another Angel and the Ape cover. That's a lot of fun. Now, what I talked about earlier, I mentioned body language. Look at the body language on Angel here. This beautiful S curve, and then the toe is turned in. It's very natural, and it's adorable. Now we go on. Now we get into some of the more realistic stuff, the more illustrative work that Bob could easily knock out of the park as well. Here's a great cover from Supergirl. You got the kids partying back here, and old Kara can't get into the party. Can't even get a date. But the cat's licking her hand. I love that. It's beautiful. The body language back here too. These two holding each other and dancing. This girl here is just having a ball. This dude's watching it all, and then this cat back here playing his guitar. This is just so great. Look at this cover. Dynamic. I mean, this could be it almost has a Neil Adams feel to it. Um, and what I'm amazed at is some of this ink stuff. You know, it's so rough looking when you get up close to it. Just these pen hatches here. It looks like pen to me, not brush. Down here we got more brush work. But yeah, there's a lot of pen work here, but just beautiful. Look at that. That is a really, really cool looking cover. I had to double check this one because I thought this was Garcia Lopez, uh, but it looks like this was done uh, before. Oh wait, no, this is 1983. This is 1983. But it has this Lois Lane here has a kind of Garcia Lopez feel to it. But there's the credit, Bob Oksner, artist. So he penciled and inked it. So this was towards the end of his career. 84, 85 was the last time he was drawing stuff where he put his pencils down. But look at the level he's performing at here at that age. I mean, that's pretty doggone amazing. Yeah, 83. Wow. Yeah, now here's some of the Superman stuff I was telling you about. Look at that figure of Superman. Look at his face, the determination, the handsomeness, the neck, the shoulders. Um, he looks he looks like a powerful, powerful man. He doesn't look like a freak like the Hulk or anything like that. This is a guy, maybe a bodybuilder, a Frank Zane or somebody, or a Steve Reeves body. Uh, it's completely natural and normal. His body language is natural. Uh, the figures on the ground, Lois on the ground. Got some false perspective back here with those figures. They almost look like they were cut out and pasted and dropped in there. Um, and they might have been, to make room for the balloons. But I wish that they had given Bob an actual Superman tail to draw. But I love this cover. This is just great figure work. Here's another one from that same era. They were gearing up for the big 300th issue of Superman. This kind of perspective here kind of looks like a Carmine Infantino layout, but that's Bob. You can tell by the inking here on the muscles, and again, this wonderful Superman face. I mean, it's, to me, the three greatest Superman faces were, of course, Kurt Swan, uh, Bob Oksner, and uh, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, bar none. Okay, I got to throw John Bogdanov in there too, for a modern era. I always loved this cover. I was disappointed in the interior. It was Kurt Swan, but instead of having Bob inking it, it was I believe Tex Blaisdell, whom I was just never a fan of his inking. It just laid flat there to me. But I love the fun of this cover. The kind of send up of McDonald's. These cute waitress girls back here. Again, look at this, the body language. It's completely feminine, completely natural. No, pushed out wasp waist stuff that you see, constantly in comics. This is the stuff that I like, and I hope you like it. Again, here we go. Here's some Mary Marvel. Look at the fun of this comic, and look at the look on her face here as this guy, and then the action of the say, rapier going into her cape and back and stuff, and she's so perky. Here's another sequence where she's catching bullets. Again, every one of these motions, the fingers, the hands, uh, her face, her body language here with the hand on her hips, completely feminine. You just think that this is that girl next door who just happens to have these superpowers. Look at that. So great. You've got this figure going in this direction, this figure going in that direction, and this figure going in this direction. It's it's so full of life. This is great here. And the hair, the flow of the hair, the naturalness of her legs, you know. The great thing about Bob is he's not afraid to cartoon. He's willing to push a drawing to elicit a feeling or an emotion that that drawing is supposed to capture. And that's one of the things that's so missing in comics today is that there's so much constipated posing and not enough um, naturalness to it. There's a time for that. There's a time for that, very dynamic or that pose type thing. But there's also plenty of space to make you believe these characters live and breathe. This is actually from a piece of an original. Looks so simple, doesn't it? You know, details where it needs to be. The just the the way the bodies are drawn. This nothing's over rendered. It's just great. Okay, that's all I got to show as far as Bob stuff. So let's pop into the chat here, see if there's any questions or anything we need to address. Oh, evidently I am the Clint Eastwood of comics. Well, you've made my day, Dr. Mask. What? Eastwood is the Nolan of movies? Chad Townsend is here. He says hello to all. The Bean Pad. Hail Graham. Hail chat people. Hail chat people. Oksner, yes. Zaid Comics is here. Hello, Phil. Myron Luzon says it's so cool to find ways to meet your inspirations. Met Val Semix at Albany Con last weekend. Such a kind and humble guy, and he bought one of my books too. Very nice. Wiley J. Draws says Destroyer was one of the coolest looking Timely characters. I'm trying to picture what that character looked like. Let's see if we can find him. Okay, you are right. Let's check this guy out. That's some loud outfit. Oh, this is cool. Look at this Marvel figure. Yeah, that's cool. I don't know anything about the character, what his deal is, but that's really neat. Thank you for pointing that out, Wiley J. Draws. Rancid Potato is here. He says, hey. Christina Lynn says Adventures of Jerry Lewis sounds like an interesting comic, LOL. It was actually Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis is how DC first licensed it, but then the group, the duo broke up, and then they just changed it to The Adventures of Jerry Lewis. All of those romance comics had great art. Yeah, they did. Yeah, DC really did have a good stable of romance artists. One of them, of course, was John Romita before he went over to Marvel. Normie Nerd is here. He says, good evening, Graham in chat. Marcus Kellebrew says his Supergirl was hot. Citizen Ronan reminds all of us to hit that like button, people. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers. Let's get it up there. It doesn't cost a thing to do it. And you'll, of course, be reminded, when shows are coming on as a subscriber. And it's most appreciated. It helps with the algorithms and it helps monetize the channel, which is good. Well, Marcus had Erwin Hazen at SVA. I didn't realize Erwin taught there. Sal Amendola, who taught at the Cupid School, also taught at SVA. That I knew, but I didn't realize that Erwin did. Cool. Citizen Ronan Holler, I'm drawing Truth from Truth, Justice, and America Way on my stream tonight at 10. Well, very cool. Citizen Ronan says the Dobie Gillis show was great, a very clever show. Leg kick 1. My dad's roommate had his Model T in Dobie Gillis. So they used his car in the show? Is that what you're saying? That's cool. Citizen Roman liked that Binky cover. Anthony Tolan says these classic Bob Oksner covers were all colored and usually also separated by my late boss and mentor, Jack Adler. Very cool. Yeah, when Jack was doing that stuff, DC's color on their covers was second to none. They really, really popped. Think Frank Cho got inspiration from Bob Oksner, Sexy Women and Animals? Could be. I'll have to ask him next time I see him. Marcus says, geez, Bob Oksner did the cover to Leave It to Binky, #1 in 1948. Yeah, like I said earlier, his first, comic work was 3940. So, when you think about it, Bob was around primarily from the beginning of comics. James Murphy is here, a little late, but watching from the beginning. Hail the chat. Hail to you, James. And James also reminds us to smash that like button and back two-fisted manly tales, because time's a ticking. Correct. If you haven't backed the book, you have 8 days. It's closing next Thursday, and that's it. It's done, and you can't get it. It's been upgraded to hardcovers, both covers, so it doesn't matter which one you prefer. You could get both. But if you prefer one, it's still going to be hardcover, and you're going to get all the stretch goal goodies that came with it or comes with it. But if you buy it secondarily, like on my website after the campaign is done and it's fulfilled, no goodies. And it's going to be a more expensive book. So hop on that. You're not going to want to miss it. It's an incredible team of A-listers doing this book, of stories about men being men, a celebration of what the media likes to call toxic masculinity, when in fact it's just, men being men and doing what they're hardwired to do and what they're brought up to morally do. So I highly encourage you to pick up that book if you haven't done so. Coletta started inking Lois Lane later, and even he couldn't mess up Oksner's art. He gave Kurt Swan a little more oomph in his inking. Yeah, and more so, he gave his Lois Lane sexiness, really cuteness. Dr. Mass says, I had many of these Supermans that didn't even know who did the cover. Back then at the drugstore, the cover was everything. Yeah. Survive Infinity 0088. Hail Graham, hail chat. Christina loves the character expressions. Yeah, that's one of the best things about Bob's work. It brings life to two dimensions. I rail about this all the time. The need to push the drawing, to push the emotions, because you're dealing with a two-dimensional thing that you're trying to make people believe is three-dimensional. And if you try to go for some kind of little nuance thing, on a little figure face that's this big, you're gonna fall flat. Uh, Guys like this who knew how to cartoon know what to leave out to encapsulate the expression that the artist is trying to and the writer are trying to put forward. And this guy could do it. I'm sure you're aware that Bob Oxner's comic book females were based on his own wife and daughters. If I recall correctly, one of Bob's daughters was an actress who was Margot Kidder's stand-in in Superman the movie. Well, that's interesting, Anthony. Thank you for sharing that. Nothing in DC Comics like this today. The Anger Gamer, love the shirt, Graham. Picked up a couple while in Oahu this week. Nice. Swan belongs in a museum with Alex Ross. Swan is, again, another one of those guys that's sort of taken for granted. that he spent almost an entire career drawing Superman and became, at least for my generation, the Superman artist. Uh, there were periods of absolute greatness, and then there were periods where you could see, this is a guy that's been doing it for 40 years or 30 years or whatever. And, he wasn't thinking creatively in his layouts or his designs and stuff like that. But Kirk could draw like a son of a gun. And in the 1970s, early 1970s, 1971, I believe, is when they were going to revamp the character and kind of depower him, and that's so they came up with that Kryptonite No More storyline. And Kurt really stepped up his game. And they had Murphy Anderson inking him, but there's a whole different look to his artwork, his layouts and stuff. And I'll talk about that a little bit because I want to do a show on Kurt. And I'll save that little tidbit of stuff for that show. But we're talking about Bob tonight. Marcus, I'm going to try and meet Andy and Billy at Heroes Con, but don't have a Hawaiian shirt. Well, go get one. Chad Townsend says he met Don Perlin at the Valiant offices back in the early 90s, and I thought he was old then. So glad he is still drawing. Don's been around. Riley J. Draw says that Destroyer was also Stan Lee's first creation. Ah, so he wrote those stories? I'm surprised he didn't bring them back, when he revamped Marvel. Citizen Ronan, all that stuff is great. The women girls evoke the all-American girl image. It's sad that kind of thing is gone. Well, it's not totally gone. Guys like me do it. That's the kind of stuff I like drawing. Douglas Eugene Rockstead Jr. says he grew up on the Irwin Hazen Dondi strip. When Irwin was an instructor, he'd be working on some of these Dondi strips, during classes while we were working on assignments and stuff. And he'd be cutting out Xeroxes of Dondi's head from previous strips and pasting it down, and we're like, that's cheating. Why are you doing that? Why don't you just redraw it? And it wasn't until, I started doing newspaper strips years ago and realized that, yeah, you've done that face a million times before. It's no point redrawing it. There's only so many angles that you can do. And Irwin, it probably wasn't paying that well at the time because the continuity strips were dying even back then. And so he was, he was just trying to speed the process along. And nobody reading it would have noticed it. So that was a great learning experience seeing that. I have a shirt with Batman that's kind of Hawaiian. Maybe I'll see you there. Oh, cool. Yeah, Andy's got like a Captain America one that has like plants on it and then the cap shield. Zaid Comics says, I told the manager at my local comic shop about Two Fisted Tales, and he said these are all of the creators that should be working in the mainstream right now. Yeah, they all are. Well, they all should be. They're all A-listers. If you haven't backed Giant Size Two Fisted Manly Tales, why do you do these things to yourself? That's a good question, Dr. Mask. Bob Oksner gave me the original art for the entire Shazam Talkie Tawny story he drew. I still have it all. Oh, you better have it all. You better not have sold off one piece or two pieces. You can either sell it all off or you keep it all. But that's amazing. That's really cool. It's another character I love. Well, you all know I'm a huge Captain Marvel fan. I won't call him Shazam because that's the old man. And Mr. Tawny, the talking tiger, is just one of those great whimsical characters. It's so great. I'm getting jealous of Anthony Tolan here. I really liked Oksner's Stanley and his monster comic. They integrated him in Green Arrow universe later, darker version, of course. Of course. Swan drew an Aquaman limited series in the 90s, inked by Al Vey. It is excellent. Yeah, that was after they had kind of taken him off Superman when they brought the John Byrne era in. He did one too that was inked by Eric Shanauer, I believe. JP Roca thinks a show on Kurt would be nice. Excellent. Oh, the Destroyer showed up in the Invaders in the 70s. Oh, you knew Roy Thomas was going to let that go by. Oksner was so underrated. Amen. CG equals mainstream now. Yes, sir. I have a let's see, Chad Townsend. I have a Hawaiian shirt with Joe Kubert, Enemy Ace, and Sergeant Rock panels on it. That's kind of cool. Hey, Niall. Hello there. Glad you liked the show. You guys had a great show last night with Bill and Sarah on. Bill Sienkiewicz and Sarah Frazetta was on. Can't believe you got Bill on before me. I've been trying to get him and work out the schedule with his agent, and you got him before me. Bastards. All right. I think we have covered everybody in the chat here, and we've done a good job on covering our man, Mr. Bob Oksner. Look for his work. That stuff is not expensive, in the bins, because he is underrated. A lot of those guys' work you can find. DC probably has, I think somebody in the chat mentioned some of the collections. So you could probably find his work there. I'd love to see a collection of the Angel and the Ape. That would be really cool. So again, Giant Size Two-Fisted Manly Tales, it is closing next Thursday. Both covers are hardcover. You're getting the bookmark, the trading cards, the mini print, stickers, all kinds of goodies that are going to come with it. And you've got 112 pages in hardcover of some of the greatest artists that ever worked in comics. Michael Golden, Butch Geist, Larry Stroman. You've got stories by, or Kelsey Shannon's in there too. Stories by Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, Mike Barron, Kevin Grievous of Underworld fame. It's got 2 stories in there. Did I say Bo Smith? One on an Earp creator. Just great stuff. Guys that know how to write great comics, and artists that deliver, on them as well, and have for years. These guys are at the top of their game, and they're great. And the only reason you don't see them at Marvel and DC is because either they choose not to work for them, and I can see why, or more than likely they've just been ostracized, because for various reasons. Some of it's politics, some of it's ageism, and some of it is just a lack of understanding of what great comics are by young editors that don't have the chops to do the job. So, if you can, pick up this book, help support these guys, and you won't regret it, and it'll look great on your shelf as well. So everybody that came into the chat to listen to this episode, I appreciate it. I always appreciate talking with you guys, and I love going back and forth with the chat. and discussing these wonderful artists. Feel free to pop in, guys, as suggestions, artists whom you'd like to hear more about. And maybe we'll do a show on that. Until then, my friends, you have a great week. We'll probably see you on the Kings. Will probably be the next one on Monday. And until then, have a great one. Bye-bye now.